December 16, 1944, the Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The air is biting cold and the ground is hard underfoot, hardened by the icy grip of winter. The trees loom dark and skeletal against the dull gray sky. Silence falls over the Allied lines in the pre-dawn hours, but it's not the kind of silence one associates with peace. No, this is the quiet before the storm, the kind of silence that makes your heart race in anticipation. From deep within the forest, the distant rumble of heavy artillery breaks the stillness. Then suddenly, the earth shakes as German forces, 200,000 strong, launch their last desperate push. The Battle of the Bulge, the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the U.S. Army in World War II, has begun. The Germans, led by Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, are aiming for the port of Antwerp, hoping to split the Allied forces and seize a final victory on the Western Front. A young German tank commander, Oberleutnant Karl Weber, crouches in the cramped turret of his Panzer IV. His breath fogs the cold steel as he scans the horizon, his fingers twitching over the controls. His unit is part of the spearhead of this audacious offensive, and today they are crossing into a terrain they know all too well, the dense forests of the Ardennes. For them, this is familiar ground. But what they don't know is that the terrain has changed, and so has the face of warfare. As Weber scans the horizon, he doesn't yet know that his unit is about to meet something that will shake their confidence to its core. The Germans have come prepared with an arsenal of weapons, including the deadly Tiger tanks and the newly introduced King Tiger. These machines were formidable, but they could not have predicted what would come next. A rumbling noise rises in the distance. It's not the familiar sound of German tanks. It's something different. The ground shakes in a new, unfamiliar way. Weber squints against the snow and hears it again. The distinctive low growl of American tanks, the M4 Sherman and the M26 Pershing. The Americans are here, and they're not what the Germans expected. December 17, 1944, the Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The first clash between German and American forces happens just as the fog begins to lift over the frozen landscape. Karl Weber's Panzer IV rumbles along the snow-dusted roads, flanked by his comrades, when suddenly the silence is shattered by the sharp crackle of machine gun fire. It's the unmistakable sound of American infantry and armored units opening fire. A line of Sherman tanks emerges from the trees, their turrets pivoting to track the German tanks. The sound of their engines is almost deafening as the Americans advance. Weber's heart skips a beat. He had heard rumors, whispers of the American tanks, but nothing prepared him for this. The M4 Sherman is no King Tiger, but it is mass-produced, reliable, and relentless. He watches, stunned, as the American tanks move forward with surgical precision, their shells crashing into the German defensive lines. One of his comrades' tanks erupts in flames as a Sherman shell strikes it directly. "Feuer!" Weber shouts as his crew begins to return fire, but it feels futile. The Americans are well coordinated, and their tanks seem to be everywhere. His Panzer IV is no match for the M4 Sherman's firepower. He is suddenly aware of the chasm between his unit and the industrialized war machine the Allies have put into play. The Sherman's 75mm gun is a formidable weapon. It punches through the German armor with ease, creating a devastating scene of wreckage in the Ardennes. Weber has trained for this moment, but he had never expected to face something like this. The Shermans, despite their relative lack of armor, are fast, maneuverable, and most of all, they come in numbers. A German tank unit is only as strong as its supply of fuel and shells, and the Americans have an almost endless supply. Weber's crew watches in stunned disbelief as the M4 Shermans advance. "There are too many of them," one of his gunners exclaims, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear. Weber's grip tightens on his controls, his mind racing. In the distance, another rumble is heard. This time it's even deeper, more menacing. A giant American tank appears, the M26 Pershing. It's bigger, faster, and far better armored than the Sherman. Its 90mm gun is capable of knocking out any German tank with a single shot. As the Pershing rolls into view, Weber knows that this is not just a battle. It's a shift in the war itself. The Germans have never faced anything like it. The first round from the Pershing hits the Panzer IV, ripping through its armor as if it were paper. The explosion is deafening, and the turret of the German tank flies off, leaving a smoldering wreck behind. Weber's tank crew can only watch helplessly as the M26 Pershing continues its advance, unstoppable. The battlefield is littered with the wreckage of German tanks, and for the first time, the reality sets in. They are no longer the ones who control the battlefield. December 18, 1944, the Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The brutal reality of the situation begins to settle over the German forces. The initial surprise of the American tank assault gives way to a harsh truth. This is no longer a war of equal opponents. The Germans have been outpaced, outproduced, and outmanned. As the day progresses, the battlefield becomes a graveyard for their once feared tanks. Karl Weber surveys the wreckage of his comrades' tanks. The forest is littered with smoldering hulks of German armor. The M4 Shermans and M26 Pershings continue their relentless advance, and the ground is thick with the acrid smoke of burned-out vehicles. It feels as though the war is slipping through his fingers. He hears the orders being shouted over the radio, orders to retreat, orders to fall back and regroup. But Weber knows, deep down, that the retreat won't change the outcome. He has seen firsthand how the Americans have adapted to every challenge. They are no longer just a formidable opponent. They are a force that is impossible to stop. The Germans had always prided themselves on their technological superiority. The Tiger tank was once the pinnacle of engineering, a machine that could crush anything in its path. But the Americans had taken the lessons of war and industrialized them. The T-34, the Sherman, the Pershing, these were not just tanks. They were symbols of an unstoppable machine. As Weber watches another group of M4 Shermans roll past, their crews focused, determined, he knows that his hopes of victory are fading fast. The war is no longer about strategy or heroism. It is about logistics, industry, and numbers, things that Germany simply cannot match. The once proud Wehrmacht is no longer the apex predator on the battlefield. The Germans have come to realize that their war effort has been broken by the very thing they once underestimated, the industrial might of the Allies. Weber's heart sinks as he watches the last of his unit fall back into the forest. The Battle of the Bulge, though far from over, has already dealt a decisive blow. The war is slipping away from Germany, and Weber knows that it may be too late to turn back.